Hello and welcome to the 1-year DIY solar update. Just to fill you in, a little over a year ago I was given a quote of about $28,000 to have a big box company come and do my solar. I instead did my own research and was able to do it myself. Along the process, not only did I save a lot of money, but I also saved a huge tax credit which this big box company expected me to give them. So this is going to be the 1-year update. If you want to watch the install video, that's also going to be on my channel. It shows you what to do and what not to do. But right now I'm going to give you the 1-year update, and I'm going to update you on several things. And over the last year, I've had people ask me questions, and I'm going to address them all right now in one video. So I'm going to try to keep it short and to the point. But some of the things I'm going to try to cover are things like PG&E, the monitoring platform, EV impact on solar, Wi-Fi, cleaning solar panels is another big one, battery backup, tax return, and of course any regrets that I have with the system. Like I said, I was quoted $28,000. The way the loan was structured, it was kind of meant to keep me locked in for a very long period of time. I think it was a 20-year loan. And it assumed I gave them my tax credit right off the bat, so I really wouldn't have been saving any money anytime soon. And the reality is, you know, the price of solar is dropping so much that I'm so glad I didn't go with that big box company. And you know, one important thing I really am going to touch on in this video is why I wouldn't do solar or do DIY solar again. So moving on to the first topic, how has the system been since the install? The system has been great. It's been doing everything it was designed to do. Power is flowing from the sun to my inverter to back to the grid or to my home. I can tell different times of the year will have better production than others. So for example, the summer will have better production than right now in the winter. Right now it's kind of sad how much power those things are producing. But the first thing I really wanted to show you is the monitoring platform that SolarEdge has. This platform is available through the app or through the desktop. So I'm going to cut over to the desktop and show you a screenshot of what this platform kind of looks like here. So this is what it would look like on the app. And it shows you your day's production, your month, and your lifetime in terms of megawatt hours. So you can see as the day starts and goes on, production goes up, and at a certain point it peaks off. So that's what this graph is showing. Obviously it's not a complete graph, it eventually tapers back down, but day after day it's going to look like that. It's usually the same pattern every single day. And the cool thing with the monitoring platform is if I were to click on this button up here, I can see my entire setup of arrays, and I know exactly which one is producing how much power. Meaning if you have some panels next to a tree, you can see that that tree is restricting those panels from getting as much sunlight as the other panels. Pretty neat. You can see what's going on every day. If you have a problem with any single panel, you can see it through the app and address it. And you can see, although it's a 6.5 kilowatt system, there's really not a single day that I actually produced that much power, to be honest with you. The next thing I wanted to touch on is the PG&E billing and how that works. You can have a different energy company wherever you live. But the whole point is, once you have solar panels up, you enter what's called the net energy metering agreement. So for that first year, you're not really paying a monthly bill. You're paying a small interconnection bill, which is for me like $10 a month. I'm also paying for the cost of gas, which is another $5 to $7. So my average monthly bill is about $17 a month. And then at the end of the year, they look at sum of what you've produced versus what you've used in terms of power, and you true up. So you're either going to owe your energy company money or you're going to receive a credit back. And in my case, even with an electric car, I received a credit back. So I'm going to cut over to the screen and show you what my production looked like, for example, for the month of August. You can see most days I was actually producing a lot more than I used. On certain days I was using more power than I produced, but those are probably the days that we charged our car. This is my whole year of NEM charges. So my system went live in about October, and since it was the end of the month and we weren't here, I actually produced more than I used. But because it was the winter and at the time we were probably running space heaters a lot, I used a lot of power for that December, January, and then February used less power, and then starting in March all the way through September, I produced a ton of power. So here's my account summary. This right here just kind of shows you what my charges were for that month. So like I said, you know, it's $8 in gas charges, $10 interconnection fee. So this is my 17 bucks for the month. But at the time, this is as of October, this is when my 1 year true up happened. I was at negative 286 in terms of balance. So we have an electric vehicle, and the really cool thing is that we're in a electric vehicle rate program with PG&E. So we essentially agree to only charge our car from about midnight till 3 p.m. And when we do that, we get charged a lower rate than if we were to charge the car, you know, say at 4 p.m. And that is really cool because throughout the day I'm producing power and I don't really use it at night. And when I do use it, I get to be billed at a lower rate. So that's worked out pretty well for that so far. It's the car we have is a Tesla 90D, so it's a 90 kilowatt hour battery. If we charge overnight, it's going to be about 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So say we come home with 50 kilowatt hours left in that battery and we need to charge an extra 30 or 40, we'll times that by 13 cents a kilowatt hour. It's only a couple dollars to charge the car, so it's not that bad. One other thing that I wanted to address is cleaning solar panels. Now, I've seen people that will pay to have someone come and clean their panels. Here's the truth. Does cleaning your panels improve production? Yes. Is it worth it? No. Now, unless you're going to do it yourself, hey, have at it. But the truth is that if you were going to clean your own panels, and I'll show you on this graph right here, when I clean my panels, you could see a spike in production. This should have tapered off right here, and it was doing so the last couple days. But instead, you can see right here where it spiked, but then it came back down later in the day. So when you clean the panels, you're producing maybe an extra 2 kilowatt hours a day, and that comes out to about 60 kilowatt hours a month. And depending on how you look at that, it's about $8 a month in savings. Now, like I said, if you're going to do it yourself, by all means, have at it. But if you're going to pay someone, and I'm just throwing out some local quotes here, $4.50 a panel to go up on the roof to clean them, or $2.50 a panel for ground mounted panels, you're looking at around $50 to $90 to clean the panels. So I'm telling you right now, when you clean your panels, that's an $8 monthly benefit. That's during the summer months, even less so in the winter. How can you justify spending $50 to $90 to have someone clean your panels when it's only going to save you $8? It doesn't really make sense. It honestly would be cheaper just to add another panel or two, and then you don't really have to worry about cleaning them. When it rains, that kind of does a pretty good job at cleaning those panels. I've been up there to clean them twice. It's not hard, but it's kind of a pain. It does, you know, with me walking up on the roof, it does put wear and tear on my roof. And quite honestly, it's not really worth it. Although it's aesthetically pleasing to, you know, look at your house from the street and go, oh yeah, those are clean, shiny panels, it's not really worth it in terms of production. My system when I bought it did not come with a Wi-Fi setup, which is hugely inconvenient. It did come with an Ethernet port and also the option for me to buy a Wi-Fi module to add onto it for a couple $100. I kind of went the ghetto route and I bought a Wi-Fi transmitter with an Ethernet connection. I'll show you guys a video of that here in a sec. Alright, so I wanted to show you guys what I did in order to get this inverter hooked up to Wi-Fi. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the whole system here. Pull this panel off. Now you can see this whole thing's off. One of the options was to get a Wi-Fi adapter for this thing, but it was like $300 plus. So here's what I did instead. I got this Wi-Fi Ethernet cable adapter, So this connects Ethernet cable to Wi-Fi. So you got to program this to your Wi-Fi, and I hooked it up to the Ethernet connection on the inverter that goes into here and plugs in behind these buttons. And then the last thing I had to do is wire power to this, but that goes down here and it's plugged into this outlet, and then this outlet is getting power from the main panel. So this is essentially an extra outlet on this side of the house, and it's what's powering my little Wi-Fi device here. So the other option is you can run this Ethernet cable all the way back to your router, but that would be, you know, at least 100 feet here, and it was kind of hard to do it while making it look clean. This was my solution, and it's been working so far. So, Ethernet, Wi-Fi adapter, power. That's it. But like I said, nowadays all these inverters probably come with built-in Wi-Fi, so you don't really have to worry about that. One other question I've been asked a lot is about battery backup and why I don't have one. Well, quite honestly, we've never had the power shut off here because we're so close to an airport and a hospital. The power, we're not really affected by the California power shutoffs. Now that I got an electric heat pump, now it kind of makes sense to have a battery backup. Why? Because we're in an EV rate with the energy company, that means that my cheapest energy is going to be from midnight to 3 p.m. I have an all-electric heat pump now that wants to run potentially any time of the day. I have found now that when this thing runs 3, 4, 5, 6 p.m. and it's running the air conditioner or the heat setting, it is doing so at top tier price with the energy company. So that's still something I need to figure out. So one other thing I wanted to touch on is the tax credit. So when I did my taxes, I was able to write off the cost of doing the solar. So just ballpark, it was around $10,000 to do my solar install. The tax credit, which was for 30%, made it so I had a $3,300 tax credit. So overall, the cost of my system was around $6,700 out of pocket. Pretty good. $6,700 compared to $28,000. That's pretty dang good. Now, there's no limit on this tax credit. So if you install some mega system in your mega house, the same formulas apply. The other thing I really wanted to touch on is when you think of a solar tax credit, now it's not only the cost of the solar. Say if you're doing solar and you have to upgrade your panel. I know people that have included the cost of the panel with the cost of the solar. Now, let's say that you get a battery backup in addition to. It's all part of the solar. Now, let's say you want to do a battery backup, panel upgrade, and solar panels, but your roof is too old. You got to upgrade the roof. Again, I know of people that have gotten away with bundling everything, right? And then applying that 30% tax credit to everything. The whole IRS thing, it's a self-reported number. So unless you're going to get audited, no one's ever really going to question you on those numbers. Now you are going to have to be able to prove it one way or another. One other thing I really wanted to touch on, and I want to get this into everyone's head, is do not lease your panels. Do not lease them, unless it's from Tesla. But, you know, I had a friend the other day that contacted me about a house that they were about to buy, and they said, hey, this house is great, we want to put in an offer. They're like, hey, can you look at this solar lease for us? This house has fallen out of escrow several times because of this. So I'm looking at this lease, and it was essentially a 25-year contract. These previous homeowners agreed to be on a 25-year contract with this energy company, and no matter what, every single month they were going to have to pay, I think it was starting at like $150 a month. Boom, boom, boom. And every year that price went up by a certain percent. I think it was like 2%. But by the end of those 25 years, they were going to be paying over $180 a month for this system. Now, where the homeowners screwed up is when they signed that lease, they agreed to own that system or have the next owner of the house assume that lease. And that's where the problem started. The new owners who maybe didn't have kids and don't use that much power, maybe they work a lot, they don't need that system. They have no obligation, or they're under no obligation to take ownership and, take over that lease. So what do you do as the homeowner? Well, you have two options. You either buy out the rest of the lease, which in this case was like $40,000, or you take the system with you to your next house. Now, if you're watching my previous video on how to install a solar, I don't know, I don't really want to move that ever again. I want to just leave it there. Taking it off is going to be a nightmare. So hence, this is why this house fell out of escrow multiple times. And I think the system had only been there for about 2 years, so it wasn't even that old. And it was a 4 kilowatt hour system, so it wasn't that big. So I really feel bad for those homeowners. Now, I said earlier, don't lease it unless you're going to go through Tesla. And again, don't quote me on this, you got to do your own research. But as far as I understand it, when you lease through Tesla, you can break that lease at any time for any reason. So that's the bet that Tesla's willing to make. They're willing to make the bet that they're the cheapest or your money back. And that's a really good deal, especially if you later on down the road, if you want to sell your house, you can just go, hey, take these off my house. Done. Okay, you don't have to deal with buying out the rest of the lease or anything. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you lease the system, you do not get the tax credit. The company who owns you now, they get the tax credit. So keep that in mind when you think about leasing a system and they make the numbers look all pretty, because the numbers aren't always as pretty as they make them look. So people have asked me, have you had any regrets about the system? The only real regret I have is I should have made the system bigger. I didn't know it at the time, but as far as my county is concerned, any system under 10 kilowatt hours is pretty cookie cutter. I don't even think they look at it. They just and they approve it. So I wish I would have gotten a bigger system, because obviously now with an electric car I have a higher demand, and with an electric heat pump, that's an even bigger demand on my system. And it would have just been nice to be owed money every year than to owe money. Now obviously a bigger system would have cost more. You can make that argument, blah blah blah, but you're future proofing your investment here. And to me, again, I wish I would have gone bigger. So two of the common questions I get are, why did I run conduit? As in, why did I run my wires above my roof line and not through my attic? So in order to run these cables through the attic, you can use something called a solar deck. It's essentially a junction box that mounts to the rooftop, and doesn't let any water in or anything, but you can run all your cables through there, run them through the attic and then to your panel. And the only answer I have for you is I don't know. But when I was designing my system, there's another house, a couple houses down, that is the exact same floor plan, and they have solar. So I was kind of mirroring what they do, just because, if when permitting came out, if they ever said, hey, you're not supposed to do it that way, then I could go, they did it that way. So I was kind of, just being careful. And I really didn't want anyone crawling in my attic, in case I had to go in there and, look at my wiring. Because who knows what else they're going to find, to be honest with you. So I just did it just to be safe. The other question I get is, why did I use optimizers versus microinverters? And at the time, and this was maybe 2 years ago now, it was cheaper to go with optimizers. Now when you look at the prices, it doesn't really matter either way. So at the time I was going with just what was cheaper and what was easier for me to understand to install. Nowadays you can do whatever you want, right? So now to my biggest point is why I wouldn't do this again. Mainly because the price of solar has gone down so much that it wouldn't really be worth it for me to, try to figure this out again and take a couple of days or weeks to install it, when I can just go to Tesla and pay $1.50 per kilowatt to install a system. So comparing apples to apples, a system that's 6.5 kilowatt size, like this, like the one I have here, through Tesla would have cost $9,400 after incentives. Now, I paid about $6,700. Would I pay an extra $3,000 to have someone do it for me? Probably, right? Because that's a couple of weeks worth of work. And plus, the lump sum of what they are charging you is still a tax credit that goes back into your pocket. So unless you're really into DIY and self-accomplishment, I wouldn't even tackle a project this size anymore. I mean, I'm lucky to be 2 miles away from a warehouse that provides parts for solar installs, and the company that provided my panels is like 3 hours up the road. So it wasn't hard for me to source materials for my project. I got 2 Home Depots within a mile radius of me, so it was easy for me to do it. You know, if I forget something, go to the store, no big deal. But if you're in an area where it's not so easily accessible, it might just be easier to go through Tesla. You know, that way you don't gotta call buddies up and be like, hey, you wanna help me lift these panels up all morning? Like, you know, again, it's fun, go ahead. If you want some time with your boys or girls, go ahead and do it. But the cost is just so cheap now that it's not really, it's hard to justify doing a DIY install. And I'm going to show you right now what Tesla's website currently shows for installs. So for a house like mine, you can see here, and I'm just guesstimating $200 electric bill, but for an 8.16 kilowatt system, it is just under $13,000. That is a bigger system than what I have now. And that is not much different than what it would have cost me to install a system that size, to be honest with you. To add that many more panels, because I think I was looking around $13,000. Because each panel is about $350, it was at the time. So their cost before incentives is $16,400. You get your federal tax credits, so you're 13 grand out of pocket. That's not bad. I mean, to have someone come and do it and be responsible if anything fails, that's not bad. And like I said, for me to install it bigger, the next size up, it honestly would have been around the same price. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to do it yourself anymore. If you guys are interested in going the Tesla solar route, I'm going to put a link in here in the description. It's definitely the easier route nowadays. And then here are a couple of other things that I want to point out. I find out people often saying that they want to get solar in case that there's a blackout, then they'll still have power. That's not the case, because the only time the system is live is when there's power feeding the inverter. So as soon as there's no power to the inverter, the whole thing shuts off. Now, if you had a power wall, that's different. I'm sure they can configure a way to charge your power wall during the day, and then you can use the power wall when you need power. But as it stands right now, if I were to lose power during the day, my whole system is shut down. In that case, someone like me, I would still need a generator backup. The other thing is, especially here in California, I have known people that have gotten PG&E to purchase them either solar or battery backup, especially if they're in an area where there are lots of these planned energy shutdowns with PG&E. So PG&E has agreed through some settlements to pay for these people's battery backup. Now, some of the key things that you need for your property is if you're on a well, or if you rely on certain medical devices that need to be energized. With those two factors, I think you can get your energy company or PG&E, you know, to pay for some, if not all, of your system. The other thing I want to point out too is a little trick I learned from other people is if you're going to go through Tesla and let's say your roof either needs to be fixed or you need a new roof, Tesla has been known to help the homeowner pay for either a part of the roof or the entire roof. Now they just may cover the portion of the roof that's covered with panels, but either way, it's a lot cheaper to have them pay for a part of your new roof than for you to have to eat the price of an entire new roof. Now, again, you can probably still group the price of your Tesla solar and the price of your roof into one tax credit. Again, don't take my advice, but something to think about. So there's my 1 year in review. Hopefully, you know, I helped explain some things. If you have any questions, again, throw a comment down and I'll